First question is, I've seen many viable vacant homes leveled by the city to become vacant lots. Do any of you have a desire or plan to see vacant buildings reused rather than razed, especially to increase home ownership or provide space for new businesses or even urban agriculture? Alex, why don't you start this off?
Yes, I do. I think that it's about time that we looked at, instead of tearing down the houses, which cost somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000, if we look at ways to take these buildings and rehab them using city labor so that we are providing jobs, and use these structures, if for nothing else, through the Rochester Housing Authority to provide homes and places to live for the unfortunate, the disabled, and the homeless. We may not want that to be the ultimate goal. What we would like is these new houses to be sold, hopefully to some of the people that helped build them and rehab them. If we have vacant properties or we need to tear down the houses, it's time that we started to consider urban agriculture as an option. This is something other cities have taken quite the lead on, whether we're talking about Philadelphia, Cleveland, Detroit, all these cities, Los Angeles, I can go on, all these cities have viable urban agriculture, which in many cases is cooperative, owned by the people who work there, owned by the communities that they're in, and produce jobs and profits.
Tom or Bill, want to jump in?
Yes. All vacant houses are not equal, and we need to understand that. And many people rightfully look at the situation and decry the fact that houses are being torn down. But let me tell you, Tom Richards knows this to be a fact. When a house gets on the demolition list, it's pretty much beyond the point of any kind of rehabilitation. And they become eyesores. And it's one thing, we can sit here and speak about preserving a house, but if you happen to be living next door to one of those, and it's been sitting next door to you for 4 or 5 years, burnt out, abandoned, just plundered, no, that is not doing anybody any good to leave those houses there. The second thing is that our population continues to shrink from a high of 334,000 to what will probably be somewhere close to 200,000 when the census figures come out next month, actually a month from today. And we have to understand that part of our problem is created by movement of people out of the city into an expanding housing market in the suburbs. We can't find a better way to control the production of housing. And and that's why regional approaches are needed for these kind of things, so we can have better control this. And then we need to consider, as has been proven in this housing crisis, that home ownership is not suited for everyone. People have gotten locked into mortgages they can't afford. So we need to create different kinds of structures. But I will tell you this, we found creative ways to use that housing. When the old Fight Square was torn down and rebuilt and replaced with Anthony Square, we deliberately reduced 148 housing units down to 48. You know what happened to the other 100 people? They didn't flee the city. They were able to use Section 8 certificates to relocate to existing housing stock in the city. Houses that they could go rent that were on the market. So you've got to be creative, but you just can't look at a problem and say, oh, you're tearing down a house. Some of them need to be torn down because they have long outlived their useful function, and they're expensive to us. And I'll finally say that we need to look at how we can bring better connection between the people who write these mortgages, who are in distant places, and the process of foreclosure, which takes way too long. We need to get better control. And we have neighbors who will tell us, you know, the truck backed up here last week, and those people moved in the middle of the night. We know that house is vacant. We need to find a way to seal that house up and protect it so that by the time the foreclosure process is there, the house is well preserved and it can be sold to a buyer, but not if it's been stripped of every valuable asset that it has.
Tom?
Yeah, I agree with Bill in the sense that one of the things that's causing this vacant housing problem is we have a city that's much smaller. We have more housing than we need in our city. And when you have more housing than you need, the demand does not exist economically to drive the value into the housing, and that's why you have these abandoned houses. We get more complaints in the city about failing to act on abandoned houses than we do about tearing them down. About 1,000 have been taken down in the last 4 or 5 years. Now, having said that, one of the ways that we have tried to deal with the problem of letting them go too long is there now is a program in place. A lot of these houses wind up belonging to the federal government because they're HUD-insured mortgages, and so they default, and the federal government owns them. We now have a program in place where HUD will give us access to those houses very early on in the program. And there is a program we do, we use partly public money, partly private money, to rehabilitate the houses before they've gotten to the point where they can't be used. However, it needs to be done as part of what we call a focused investment area, where we focus this investment in one area so we can have a real impact. If you fix up one house on the street and all the rest of them are gone, you haven't made a decent investment. You have to focus your effort so the demand and the development is there. And lastly, with respect to the boarding up the houses, Bill's right. One of the things that happens, as has happened in the past, is these houses get in such bad condition so quickly that we lose them. The city now has what they call an enhanced board-up program. We recently started to do it even to private houses. In the past, we only did it to houses that came into possession of the city. We're now doing it to private houses. And the reason for that is a lot of the houses belong to people who effectively walked away from them. And it takes quite a while for the process to mature. And this enhanced board-up process, it makes it very difficult to break into the house and therefore preserves the house if it's worth preserving for later. But I think we don't want to be naive about this. In fact, we're going to have to continue to take down a significant number of houses in this community if we're going to have the kind of focused, valuable areas that we want to have.